All right, Varun, we are back again live.
Good,
Welcome to the Sunday draft. How are you?
good morning, and I'm doing good. How are you? And thanks for having me on the Sunday draft again.
Okay. So this is your third visit, right?
Yep.
How does it feel? Do you feel like you're a podcaster now?
Feel since it's third, probably you should find me some space in the attic already.
So the feedback's been quite good, Varun. I don't know if you've been watching our videos and the comments are coming in. You know your YouTube is making some sort of a wave, or some not maybe just maybe a few small ripples when you get comments in, right?
Yeah,
And especially when those comments are negative, then you hit a nerve.
yeah, you touched a nerve, right? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. What was your first feeling like when you saw a negative comment?
I think yeah. So negative comments were expected, right? And we are not trying to show anyone down, nor trying to poke anyone unnecessarily, right? I mean, yeah, it only shows that we are talking about something uncomfortable, and whenever we are talking about something uncomfortable, there are negative, comments that's gonna come because unless
Yeah.
you talk the raw truth, you can't really get past it and get find the solutions, right? So we just raised, talking about our opinions rather than giving even solutions. We're just trying to, talk about the elephant in the room and nothing other than that.
When you look at some of these comments, they typically look like just hate comments, right? And those are what I guess people are afraid of on YouTube, which is all the trolls. And especially as a new channel coming up, do you think we should be afraid of these trolls, or do you think we should just ignore them? What is your strategy when it comes to trolling
I mean, for
or
a
dealing with
media house,
trolls? Yeah,
yeah, for a media house, any
any
publicity
publicity is
is
good
good.
publicity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I don't think, yeah, we need to pay heeds to give any heeds to these trolls.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree.
Actually, troll satire is what is actually taking center stage in India right now.
We'll talk about
Invoked
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
a movement out there. So
Yeah, there's a
trolling is
movement
fine.
that has spawned out in India based off of what is a very national troll. It's about the what they call the cockroach Janata Party. So we'll talk about the cockroaches that are coming out of their hiding place in India. But before that, just back to the trolls, right? I see a lot of comments coming in, and there are many positive comments and there are some negative comments. There are a lot of people who express their appreciation of what we are talking about in our videos or clips in terms of likes, right? So we get a lot of likes, a lot of views, so that is definitely on the rise. So we are definitely talking about things that most people are thinking about, and we are just sharing our opinion based off of what we feel, right? So it's really as I put it in my clips, we're just trying to understand this whole thing, what's happening around us. We are trying to do the same thing that everybody's trying to do. So that's pretty much all of it, and there's nothing else. Yeah, some of the biases will come out, right? We all have our biases, right? Just like these trolls who come in, we have our own. So but everything has to be done, in my opinion, right? Everything has to be done in a very decent, civilized way. And the only trolls that I tend to take issue with or delete come some of the comments is, if you call names, if you have nothing else to say, just want to spew hate and have no relevance in what we are talking about, then you don't factor in. So I would just delete that comment or just ignore them, right? Because that's what typical trolling is about, right? I mean, you have to, even trolls, like we'll talk about the Janata Party, right? Cockroaches, they have a manifesto. you know they have a thought behind whatever even they're trolling. So you can't just be trolling without any, just spewing hate. It doesn't make sense.
Have you thought about putting together a manifesto for the channel?
Yeah.
That would be a nice thing. Just think about like how unbiased, you're gonna stay with the channel, or things that you wouldn't typically want to engage with.
Maybe. I mean, I think at some point we will, right? At some point, and I don't say I am unbiased. We look at it from an unbiased perspective,
Yeah.
and by that I mean that we look at it from both sides of the aisle, both sides of the, we look at both sides of the story as much as we see it. But our biases will show. Like, we all have inherent biases. I mean, that's not something anybody should be afraid of. That just means that we care some about something deeply enough that
Take a
we
stand for it.
take a stand for it. And but
Yeah.
the main thing, when you talk about people who are just spewing hate, they're so rigid in their thinking, right? That you don't have any opportunity to even have a debate. And those are the people who come in and say things negative. um, there's a comment that came in which I wanted to kind of tackle head on. Again, it's on our channel, but we posted information about energy, how many countries are, especially India, have to really think about renewable energy, alternate sources of energy, and things like that, right? So we really did a comparison last time, I think,
Yep.
about all these different countries, and then how in this current economy, in this geopolitical situation with the Strait of Hormuz, with Iran and everything, the fact that you have to look at other sources of energy, and when other countries do that, I think you have to kind of applaud the fact that at least you're going towards some sort of an alternate source, because you don't want to get caught up in the Strait of Hormuz, for
Of
forever.
course. Yeah.
So in that narrative, we talk a lot about India in comparison, right? Just because we are from India, right? We although I'm a naturalized citizen, and we've been here for a long time in the US, we are still very focused on what happens in India, because that is where most of our relatives live and things like that. We care about what happens there. And when we talk about India, some of the comments that come in from trolls is this misinformation about India, right? Hate, I put it aside. Yeah, you can spew hate all day long. That's your problem. I'm not going to tackle it. But there's a lot of misinformation about India out there, I think. And it comes in sometimes in natural, common everyday conversations. Sometimes it comes in these comments, I can see it. But it's just this general misinformation coming out of ignorance for the most part. Have you felt that, being here in the US for this long, right? Have you felt that just the fact that they don't know enough, that they think about India in a certain way?
Yeah, absolutely. So, unless you go see the place yourself or experience it, or have someone reliable gone there and come back and talk about it, right? You would carry a narrative which was actually told to you. And Western media has always had a narrative of post-colonial uh, pictures of India where poverty was extremely high. We definitely have and had extreme high poverty issues in India, right? I mean, because of the population and the scale there, obviously those issues were there. And
Yeah.
yeah, there are so most of the media obviously gravitate towards the extremes. They want to show the extremes, right? I mean, rather than actually telling what is truly real, because the extremes stay in your head. So when I came here, I remember folks asking me that, like, did you sit on an elephant to school? Right? So
Did
things like
you,
that.
was that our mode of transportation, that we went
Yeah.
to
So I mean,
school every day
I
on
wish
an elephant? I
that was
wish.
true. Because, yeah, it would have been super cool. Did your dad drop you in a cart, bullock cart and stuff like that?
Oh my
So
God, really?
yeah, so I mean, they're not asking me those. They were not asking me those things out of
Hate or
from a,
prejudice, right? It's not prejudice.
absolutely,
It's
yeah.
misinformation. It's ignorance, right?
It was because they've been told, they've been shown as little as whatever is shown about India, right? They show about their extreme poverty. They show about the slums, because that is because the shock and the raw images is what they are going after, right? Like, because
Yeah.
yeah, that is what they want to show. They wouldn't want to show. They wouldn't spend their time to show the rest of
Yeah.
80%.
Yeah, and I think, and then again, if you look at New York, I'm sure this is a different story, right? When you are living in a very diverse kind of city where they are used to foreigners and people from different
Yeah,
backgrounds, you don't see that much as you see in the conservative side of parts of America, right? So that's where you see it, and I call it ignorance because again, ignorance is not a wrong thing. It's just that you don't know enough. You haven't traveled
absolutely.
enough. You
Yeah,
haven't asked the right questions enough, or
yeah,
you didn't have the right people to tell you,
yeah,
uh,
exactly.
right? This from that, right?
Yeah, you
And
didn't have
so,
anyone. Yeah,
yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
yeah, you didn't have anyone trustworthy to actually listen to. I like you didn't have that uncle who traveled and came back and told you that story, right? You didn't. So you're just listening to
yeah,
what is being told, either on radio or shown in those television channels where they obviously try to gravitate towards the shock and raw, evoking scenes rather than talk about the 80%. They wouldn't talk about the clean metro systems in Bangalore, nor the not very normal peaceful middle class life in a city like Kochi, because that is less selling.
yeah,
Nobody buys that story because, like, hey, what is extraordinary about it?
yeah.
They would rather go talk about that 3% of slum, or 5% of slum, which is still out there, and that is all they want to talk about.
Yeah, and this is, I think some of it, I blame the movies, and obviously the media, which basically will highlight the more sensational part, and it's showing a slum in Mumbai might be more sensationally, I guess, relevant for news media. But when movies do that, right? When, like, the Slumdog Millionaire is a very good example of a movie that everybody knows in the United States, right? Everybody's seen Slumdog Millionaire. But then some of the feedback or the takeaways from that is, all of India is slums. Like, they look at that and see India where there's a lot of slums, and that's because that's projected out in the movie. And sometimes even the movies and the screenplays don't do justice to kind of really paint the picture of the fact that is a small portion of what India is, right? It's
Yeah.
not the whole of it.
Yeah. Once, see, Western media obviously has built a long-standing shorthand about, visual shorthand about a country. I mean, about a country like India, right? And once a country gets mentally associated, right, with a certain image, it takes generations to change that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and not just the movies. Obviously, the movies did amplify it. Pick up Instagram or TikTok or something. Anyone who is actually on the road there is making a TikTok video or a short clip. Sometimes it might get viral because of the shock content it has, and those shock contents could be showcasing that extreme side,
Yeah.
and that is what gets propagated all through the world, and that's what millions of people are hooked on to, right? So that is the image they get to see. They wouldn't make a video about, like, those Bangalore high tech cities, or Hyderabad's high tech cities. So whatever is being shown through those TikTok videos or anything such, even if it is from the sliver of the country, that is what gets projected on.
Yeah. And it's not just India, right? Because I remember when the Iran war broke out. When you look at videos of people who have actually traveled there, it's such a beautiful country, right? So they don't show the beautiful parts of a country
Yeah, nobody.
because
Yeah,
there is a global narrative that I think these politicians and power hungry people that they want to use to advance their agenda. And what gets caught in that is a lot of people being just held back from the real unless you travel, you don't get to see what's happening really in places like India or Iran, or what the culture, very ancient cultures that actually thrive, and there's so much beauty there, and you just not just the bad parts, right? One of the things I wanted to share with you is when I came here, like, I remember a manager, one of my first few managers here, he asked me, do all women in India cover their faces,
mm.
and cover their head? So he thought everybody in India is a Muslim and cover their faces because that's his view of India, right?
Not necessarily Muslims cover their face, but yeah, I get where he is coming from. Maybe he
Yeah.
doesn't know.
Yeah.
the true difference between those religions
Yeah.
as well. So I get that question. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of stuff like that you hear. But on the other side, I appreciate people who actually take the time to pronounce a name properly, right? They care about the even a
Yeah.
name is
I
so
yeah.
unique enough that you should take time to learn it instead of
Right.
just butchering it right off the bat.
Yeah. So when I moved into my home, I mean, when we bought a house here, when we moved into that neighborhood, we were probably the first Browns in the community. Okay. And
Mm.
my neighbors, I mean, for 3, 4 days, we had boxes of goodies, chocolates, and home, baked goods coming in with a welcome note to the neighborhood, right? I mean, they were that kind and acceptive. And one of my immediate neighbors took his time. He came to us with a box of home baked chocolate cookies many days after, saying that, like, hey, we just took our time to read about, like, what can we put inside the cookie dough that won't be religiously wrong to you guys. And we did. So they did all that read up and then came about with that recipe and came to
Mm.
us with it, right? So that is that effort they have put in, and that is the
Yeah.
the that shows that, like, how respectful they are to different cultures, and they how much they think and care about it, right? So
Yeah.
there are all kind of people out there. There most of them are kind. Some of them, from what you rightly said, like, some of them talk from their ignorance, or, like, they don't know truly about, like, hey, what is that other country about.
I mean, again, even when you look at things like poverty in India, right? It's not something that, when people just blame India for it, I mean, there's a lot of outside influence that leads to some of that thing, right? When they talk about call centers in India, and I get it, a lot of call center reps who call in are Indian, like they sound Indian at least for the most part. But that doesn't mean that they're all being starved and they're lying on the floors treated like slaves. There's this impression that some people have here that people who work in India, especially with call centers and everything, are being treated very poorly, right? And that is also these big corporates that actually employ them, right?
Yeah.
If there is poor condition in certain organizations because they are treated poorly, that's not India's fault. That you have a corporate behind that, and that might as well be an American corporation who's not taking care of things, teaching them English or giving them proper benefits. You can't just blame India or Indians for it, right? I mean, it's just common sense.
And then, see, there is also the most of the countries carry an image inertia. I mean, if I can cook up
Mm.
a word, I mean, so once you put a country into a certain image or template, right, it takes ages for it to get out of it. Get out of it. I remember reading a novel from the Western world about how people thought Japan was a country where cheap imitation products were made. Then Japan evolved to be one of those pioneers of best products out there, mechanical or non-mechanical. But it took them ages,
To
for
change that
yeah,
perception.
perception. So I'm sure India would have to go through that, and MEA in India is definitely trying their best to actually change that perception. And more if people travel, right? More and more
Mm.
people from Western side of the world travel to the eastern side of the world and go to countries.
Hmm.
They would see that, like, hey, India definitely has a vast, uneven, rapidly transforming civilization, it is a state where extreme modernity and extreme poverty coexist in some shape or form. I mean, India probably has the most privileged middle class in the world. Nobody
Yeah.
talks about that.
Yeah, amongst other things, right? I mean, right now, if you look at India, it's one of the largest economies, right? It's the fifth largest, right? We have a GDP of 4.5 trillion. We are also the fastest growing economy in the world, compared to Europe
Yeah.
or even US's growth, right? So all that means that, it's not, you can't expect a country that is, drowning in poverty to be able to do all this, right? So people have to look at all these facts, right? What they end up doing is they ignore the facts. As again, the word fake news is another issue today because everything is also tagged as fake news, that nobody believes anything anymore, right? I sometimes don't even blame these trolls because they don't have the
Yeah, they
right
don't.
tools
Absolutely.
or communities or support system to tell them, hey, what you're thinking is wrong, here's the truth, right? I
Yeah.
mean, We know because we've traveled. You can talk about Japan, I can talk about Japan. We've seen the quality. We have been able to go to Japan, right? We have had the opportunity to go and travel. The fact that we traveled from India to the US and be able to, create
Coexist. Mm.
coexist here, that's because we were taught to coexist with different beliefs, different religions, right? In a very diverse and secular country where we're able to do that. So we grow up being taught to appreciate cultures
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
beliefs and people, right? And that's what I think, a lot of these people who troll, with hate about countries, whether it's India or any other country, when you point out the flaws in the American system, which a lot of people are doing today, right, because of what's happening, it hits them hard because nobody wants their country to be, cast in a bad light. But at the same time, the response is not to debate or argue in a civilized way. The response, when it comes as a troll, as hate, that's when you see, okay, there's a deeper issue that person has than just misinformation, because his misinformation is now convoluted with a lot of hate that he has built up over the years because nobody was there to tell him or her the right thing.
Yeah, most of these emotions are contextual in nature as well. There is a lot of context associated to it, but it need not be just in in the post, in the comment. It happened to be an American, but it could be anyone from the whole world, right? Anybody. I mean, possibly a Russian can also have the same opinion about India, that like India is
Yeah.
poor. A Japanese can have the same opinion about India if they have not traveled and seen the world. Most of the Eastern cultures, they probably know how, kind of have assimilated with they figured out like, hey, what is what, and who has been there for longest, and they realize like what issues India had to deal with and all that, right? So
Yeah.
most of the Westerners, not just America, right, have not seen that side. They have not
Yeah.
been told that side. They have not been told about like the loot that happened under the colonial era, right? They haven't told about like what how uh, deprived Indians were after just after like the British left, because they looted every damn thing and went. So and then we had to we had to actually bring things up from the ground up, right? I mean, so, and it is still, I mean, about 65 years of independence, we are still trying to figure these things out. And the scale that we have is such massive that like, it'll take its own time. um, so I, unless people travel and see the new India, they wouldn't really learn much, or they be very aggressive media push from the TikTokers of India, the media houses of India, even the world. Um,
Yeah.
they wouldn't really get to see that side.
I look at America today, like the US today, like there's at least 30%, right? Which is the kind of Trumpian, the MAGA, I think a lot of the misinformation or the lack of wanting or the resistance in terms of wanting to know more about what else is happening outside is coming from that side of the story, because they just I think are closed. When you are critical about anything happening in America right now, whether it is how the war is being handled, or the dependency on oil like we talked about, when you point out these things, they don't like it, right? And that's where the hate comes from. But I think the point is that it's just a small portion of America that is, I think, in that whole, I would say, closed
Mindset.
mindset. Yeah.
But if you have to if you have to frame
Hmm.
India, if you have to picture India for someone else, for your neighbor, how would you
Yeah.
do it?
I would say
Like
India is
if,
very, it's a diverse country. You got to visit it. The new India we talk about is trying to become the largest economy in the world. It's consistently growing.
yeah,
Being a large and populated country, you would still see pockets of poverty. You will
exactly.
still see that, and that's just the nature of being a very populated country. Um, but all the other kind of misinformation or misunderstandings about India, whether about the call centers, whether the rivers are clean or not, you got to go there and see. I would just say it's a very diverse place, a lot of cuisines, a lot of cultures. It is, it is a place you got to go see to believe
Experience
how
it. Yeah.
incredible it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said.
How would
Yeah.
you characterize it?
I mean, that frame would be very difficult to portray, right? I have to tell them that, like, hey, it is a place where both the extremities coexist for sure. It is definitely transitioning. It is actually in that thick phase of transition. It is where you can see the Silicon Valleys of the world and slums of the world kind of coexist. There is definitely issues such as cleanliness. There is issues such as pollution, but you can see that, like, hey, the place looks messy when you are actually cooking the dish. So the dish is being getting cooked right now, and you can see that, like, the finished product will be much better. And we are in that transition phase at this point.
Thanks, Varun.
Yeah,
Have a
thanks,
good rest
Raj.
of the Sunday. It was nice talking to you again.
Same here. Always pleasure being here. Thank you
Thanks.
for tuning
Thank you.
in.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.